I just want to give more people time to come in. Once we are 30, I will start. Still seeing.
You can't hear anything.
You can't hear anything? Can you hear now?
Yes, ma'am.
We just wanted to wait for a few more people. That's all. All right. So we can start now. And then when the others come, we would let them in. So we last week we were looking at treatment of water for portable uses. Also, we started to look at treatment of wastewater. And we said the wastewater can be sewage, the sewage from our homes, or it could be industrial wastewater. In other words, it's a paint company, and it's a paint company, and they have produced, and then they've washed off all their stuff. Everything is dumped into the environment if not treated. We said that all the wastewater from the different industries must be treated. If not, we would have a lot of problems, because if we do not treat the waste, this wastewater, some of them contain chemicals. If it's the paint industry, a lot of chemicals are used in the paint industry. In the textile industry, the same thing. In the petroleum industry, the same thing. In the fertilizer industry, the same thing. Some of you will be going for interviews with Dangote fertilizer and Dangote petrochemicals. So they could be asking you things like, you said you are a chemist and you have done environmental chemistry. So we have this problem with our wastewater. How do we go about treating it? And that's why it's important for you to understand what is involved, so that you can be able to answer questions properly. I think we looked at this slide the last time, and I explained what it was to you. And we went on to preliminary and primary treatment techniques. So when you have the wastewater, I think some people are coming, they're just coming in. Let me just let them in. All right. There's a chat. All right. Who is this Ayodele Sorry that is telling us? If you're not registered, please don't enter. Don't come and greet us. We are not here for play. I thought it was a very serious message. That was why I was looking at it. So right. So in every industry we have waste, like I said, and so we need to know how to treat this waste. So the industry has produced its waste. Some of them can be discharging their waste into a treatment facility. And peradventure, you as a chemist, you are told to either monitor or to even be the one in charge of that treatment facility. So you really need to understand what it is so that you are able to treat. After this time, I mean, by this is almost 20, after 20 past, I won't admit anybody again because they are just aligned, they're just not letting me concentrate. So tell them we're already in. So anybody who wants to come in should come in so that we can concentrate. I have just 2 more minutes of grace for anybody who wants to come in. So the first treatment is the pre-treatment. All the waste enter into a tank. And the first thing is that you must remove all the solids because we can only treat it's water. We can only treat the wastewater. So we must remove the suspended matter. We must remove the grit, the oil, and the grease. And the way to do this is to allow them to pass through what we call a screen. A screen is like a wire mesh. Like I told you the last time, it's like a wire mesh that removes all the solids, it removes all the suspended matter, it removes all the oil and grease, and it allows only the filtered water. It's like a way of filtering the suspended matter and all the solids away from the water. So after you have done that, 1 more minute, and after that, I will stop admitting people because they are just coming in at 20 minutes past. I know that we had a slight problem, but that has been sorted. That was 10 minutes ago, so they should have come in now. So after he has passed through the pre-treatment stage, he now goes into what we call the primary treatment stage. So there's a primary treatment tank, all right, which allows most of the particles, the particulates. It allows the particulates to fall under gravity, it settles under gravity. And in that, I mean, and which is called sedimentation. So the tanks are so designed that the particles, all right, will settle at the bottom under gravity, and the water, the clear water, will be at the top. So the particles is what we call the sludge. And those particles can now be taken to what we call the sludge treatment facility. But to also help us in the primary treatment, we have what we call coagulants. So we have coagulation or mechanical flocculation. This is the last one. This Moyosore that has been in the waiting room for forever. Can you, let me just remove her because she's just there to waste her time. I think she has left now. I think she just wanted to waste her time. She's been there for so long. So we have the coagulants, and we said last week, we have different types of coagulants. We could have alum, we could have lime, we could have ferrous sulfates, we could have ferric chloride. All these are coagulants, all right? And what they do is that they help the suspended solids to settle at the bottom, just like your alum. If you take your alum and you put it inside water that has particles, all the coagulants, all the particles will settle down under gravity. I mean, the coagulant makes it to settle down. So the same thing we do in wastewater treatment, we use coagulants. And we also use flocculants. It could be mechanical flocculation, or it could be a flocculant that we use. The flocculant just brings all the particles together in a flock, in a round ball. Then we talked about neutralization as well. That in neutralization, we in some parts of the company, we can have acidic waste. And in another part, we can have basic waste. Instead of us having to treat the acidic waste with limestone and the basic waste with acid, we can allow the two waste streams to meet together. And when they meet together, they will neutralize one another. So there are times you might not need to do much more than just somebody is raising their hand. Yes, Michael, can you unmute yourself and talk? Yes.
Okay, thank you, ma.
Yes.
Actually, I wanted to ask, all these treatments, can
Yes.
it be done on seawater?
On seawater?
Yeah,
No.
because I could remember.
Yes,
Okay.
go on. Go on.
Okay, I could remember a lecture you actually you took us on physical class. They said we only have like 1% good water.
Yes.
You know, that 78 is the
This
ocean, and then
99%
99.
is
Yeah,
seawater.
99% is seawater.
Right.
You know, so I wanted to ask that all this treatment that you're talking about now, the coagulation and everything, can it be done on seawater?
All right, we are going to get there. All right, seawater contains mostly ions, metal ions, that is sodium and chloride. All right, and the way to remove those ones are different. It's the tertiary treatment method. This is primary treatment method. These ones, all they do is just suspended solids. They make the water clearer so that you can now have microorganisms attacking them. So your coagulants will only allow the particles to settle down under gravity. The sedimentation tank also will allow the particles to settle down. The neutralization will just allow acidic and basic waste to be neutralized. But when we come to removal of iron, it's what we call the tertiary treatment technique. And the method we're talking about is dialysis method, electrodialysis method. We will get there, but let's leave it for now. All right.
All right. Thank you, ma.
Right.
Thank you.
So after neutralization, we have done the primary treatment. So we now go on to what we call the secondary treatment technique. And the secondary treatment technique really is a biological treatment technique. The pre-treatment, all right, is a physical method. Same thing with your primary treatment. It's a physical method because you are allowing the particles to settle under gravity. These are all physical methods, all right? But the secondary treatment technique is a biological treatment method. In this technique, we use microorganisms. We use microorganisms to biodegrade the waste. You know, we talked about biodegradable waste. In other words, waste that microorganisms can easily convert. All right. For instance, if it is organic hydrogen, it can convert it to what? What would it convert it to? You can talk. What would it convert it to? If it's organic hydrogen,
water.
It could convert it to water. If it is nitrogen, what will it convert it to? If it is nitrogen, what will it convert it to? Nobody is talking. It's all there. It's all on your screen. I'm wondering if you are not part of the class. It's all there on the screen. So if it is carbon, what would it convert it to? It's all on your screen.
Carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide. And if it is sulfur, organic sulfur, what would it convert it to?
Tetrasulfate.
Sulfate, all right? So what you have there, like I said, is a secondary treatment method. And the idea is that it removes BOD. In other words, it breaks down the biodegradable waste using the action of microorganisms on organic matter. You know, microorganisms are living things. Some of them require oxygen, some do not require oxygen. The ones that require oxygen are called the aerobic microorganisms. Aerobic microorganisms. In other words, they require oxygen. But we also have some that do not require oxygen that are called anaerobic microorganisms. These are what you find in fermentation. So if it it requires oxygen, all right, it will break down all the organics. So let's say, for instance, it's a paint industry or it's a textile industry that has carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, all in its wastewater, because they are organic in nature. All right, with the action of oxygen, it's the bacteria, the microorganisms will convert it to water. The same thing if it is carbon. In the presence of oxygen, the microorganisms convert it to CO2. And in the case of nitrogen, all right, it converts it to the nitrates. And in the case of the sulfur, it converts it to the sulfate. So your secondary treatment method is a biological method in which the action of your microorganisms go to remove BOD. That's what that is for. So it removes BOD, it reduces the BOD. So if, for instance, the wastewater from the industry, let's say it has a BOD of about 600 milligrams per liter. By the time it goes through the secondary treatment stage, most of the organics there will have broken down. And so the BOD, after it has gone through that secondary treatment stage, will be much lower than the 600. So that's the secondary treatment tank. And there are different types of these secondary treatment methods. There are several, all right? So we have what we call the aerated lagoon. We have trickling filters. We have activated sludge. We have oxidation ditch and oxidation pond. All these are different methods under secondary treatment. All of them are under secondary treatment, and they are used for reducing the BOD. So the effluent from a primary sedimentation tank, all right, is passed into aerobic oxidation. And the different aerobic oxidations, like we said, are aerated lagoon, trickling filters, activated sludge, oxidation ditch, oxidation pond. Oxidation pond. And in the University of Lagos last week, I said, how many of us were able to go and check what I said we should check at the service point, service center? How many of us? What did you see? Did anybody check? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. I can hear you.
All right. So did anybody go to check? And what did you see? That one is it's a secondary treatment method, the secondary treatment technique, and it's called the wetland method. It's a wetland. So let me just give you an idea. So if those of you who are careless and you don't go and check, I will ask you, either during test or where, tell me about the method of treatment in University of Lagos, the wastewater treatment. In other words, all the water that comes from our different hostels, the toilets and everything, it goes into this treatment area, and it is treated. The dirty water is treated and it becomes very clean. Can you mute yourself, whoever that person is that is making noise? Israel, right? So everything goes from all our different hostels. Everything now goes straight into the service area, and there it is collected and treated by the technique called wetland method. It's a secondary treatment technique, but it uses oxygen as well. So you can call it almost like a lagoon, but this one we call it wetland because there are some plants that are grown there. So we have aerated lagoon, trickling filters, activated sludge, oxidation ditch, or oxidation pond. These are all secondary treatment techniques used for the treatment of wastewater. The wastewater, especially if it's domestic wastewater, can easily be treated using the secondary treatment technique. All right. And some of us have done some research, and we have looked at the wastewater treatment plants in Lagos. And we discovered that most of them are not working. The only ones that are working only use secondary treatment and the primary treatment. That's all. All right. So let's now look at each of those secondary treatment techniques. I'll just go through them and one by one. So we said an aerated lagoon. Usually it's like a pond, or it could be a tank, a big tank. And the depth is about 3 to 5 meters deep, right? And usually we line it either with polythene or with rubber or with cement. So usually it could be a tank. If it's a tank, you don't need lining. But if it's a pond, you have to line it so that the wastewater does not seep into the underground storage. So, and here the effluent from the primary treatment is collected and it is aerated with mechanical devices. That is floating aerators. In other words, an aerator is such that it is something to just to steer up the effluent. When it's steering it, what it's doing, it is incorporating air. It is aerating. The aeration is taking place. Somebody is given a, what message are they asking? I can see some chats. What is the chat? Post is not allowing me to unmute. Why? Everybody can unmute. Can't they unmute? Please stop putting things that are not necessary on the chat. It's only things that are important that I want there, so that if I have to check, it's something that is really important that I want to check and not just other things. So usually you have that aeration. The floating aerators can be there for about 2 to 6 days. After that time, you have biodegradation of all the organics inside your wastewater. And it will have been converted to either water or CO2 or nitrate or sulfate, which are not harmful. So they could be hydrocarbons from the oil industry, or it could be fertilizer industry that produces a lot. Most of them will have carbon and hydrogen, nitrogen and sulfate, and they under biodegradation, which is your biological degradation or secondary treatment, they are easily degraded. Another type of secondary treatment technique is called trickling filters, and that's what I have here. That's a trickling filter. So you have a circular rectangular bed, all right? You can see that circular or rectangular. This is circular instead, and usually 1 to 3 meters deep. And we have bacteria in the upper layers of the filters. So this is the upper layer. So you have bacteria there. And so the bacteria, as soon as the effluents come in, the bacteria will convert most of the chemicals to simpler products which are not toxic. So like I said, wastewater is sprayed over rocks or other support. So you have a support, so you have an effluent, it could be, it could be a circular or rectangular bed, all right? The effluent comes in, and then the bacteria is in the upper layer and that bacteria biodegrades the effluent. It biodegrades the substances in the effluent into simpler products which are not I'm having to keep admitting these people. So if you see me breaking, it's because I'm trying to admit somebody or the other. Any question before we go on? Yes.
Ma, you can disable waiting room so that they don't interrupt your lecture.
Oh, all right. Let me see.
You do that by clicking on security.
What I've done is to click admit all, but there's nobody there again.
Under security, you see where you can disable waiting room.
All right, let me go to more. Security. Can't see you. Where will I see security?
It's on the
I've seen it. Thank
navigation
you.
bar
Thank you.
below.
Thank you. I've seen it. All right. All right. Thank you. I've disabled that. So I've disabled the waiting room. Thank you very much for that. So nobody is going to disturb me again. So now another one is the activated sludge. And first of all, let me give you the diagram of the activated sludge before I now talk about it. This is the activated sludge technique. It's actually a biological treatment method again, and it is, all right, some of these things have shifted, they have moved. This actually should come somewhere here. I will come somewhere here. I'll explain to you. All right. It's supposed to return back to the sludge area. So the activated sludge technique is the most versatile of the secondary treatment technique. And so you have the wastewater somewhere here. Wastewater is coming in from the primary treatment. We said the primary treatment has a sedimentation tank. And so the sludge there is taken to the sludge area for treatment. And then the water at the top of the sedimentation tank is what flows into the secondary treatment. But in most cases, people don't even have the primary treatment. They just do the secondary treatment. After they have removed all the particles, they have a screen, they remove the particles, and so the wastewater goes in through here into the secondary treatment. And then you have somewhere here, the sludge will settle. The sludge will settle, and then air is incorporated into this treatment facility. So it is an aerobic method. So your activated sludge technique is an aerobic method. Air is incorporated, and it now comes here, and you have your sludge will now settle. Your sludge will settle at the bottom, and what you have here is your clean water. So you have sludge settling and your cleaned water, and then the clean water can now be discharged out. I will explain this a bit because I need to let you know that inside your wastewater you have microorganisms. So here also you have microorganisms. So as your air comes in and your wastewater comes in, you have the biodegradation of all the pollutants there, especially the ones that are organic in nature. They are broken down and a sludge is formed. So this is almost like a tank. You have it settling down, you have the sludge settling down, and you have the clear water at the top. This clear water at the top is what can now be discharged into the environment, either into our water bodies or into the drains, all right? But the sludge here, why do we call it activated sludge? The sludge here, some of the sludge, excess sludge is discharged, but some of this other sludge returns, and it returns into the wastewater. And this returned sludge is active. It is called activated because you now have microorganisms in the sludge, and so it's more active than even the microorganisms that were there before. And that's why we call it activated activated sludge technique. This new sludge, this return sludge now breaks down even more of the organics. And so you have another settling and another returning. And so this technique, this activated sludge technique, is more versatile, it's more common, and it does a lot more of the breaking down than many other of the biological techniques. I'll give us that explanation now using this slide. So I said your activated sludge technique is very versatile and it's a very effective wastewater treatment. The microorganisms in the aeration tank, which we showed, are converted to organic matter, either to CO2 or even organic phosphorus to orthophosphate. The microbial matter is kept in the aeration tank. Later, the cells fluctuate and form a solid. So the solid settles out, a fraction of it is discarded, And then part of the solid is recycled and comes with fresh sewage. All right. So a part of it is recycled and comes with fresh sewage. Is that combination of those cells in the return sludge? Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? I'm in the class. Who is it? All right. Yeah. So thank you. So a fraction of that which is discarded, like I said, and part of it is recycled. What is recycled comes back in contact with fresh sewage. Is the combination of that is the one that comes back, as well as the new wastewater, right? The combination of the cells in the return sludge and fresh sewage gives optimum condition for degradation. You have more degradation as a result of your recycled sewage. That is why it is called activated sludge. The one that is recycled is the activated one. So the activated one comes with the fresh sewage and gives optimum condition. Do we understand? Answer. Oh. I can't hear you.
I don't really understand.
You don't really understand. Let me go back to the diagram. All right. Is it only one person? Can most of you also unmute yourself and let me know? Let me see the number. Or some of you are sleeping.
Ma, I can start from the diagram, ma. I don't really understand the
explanation.
What the explanation?
Explanation. Yes.
All right, many more. Let me see. Let me have a feel of if we are following or not. Any other person? Only two people have talked though.
Yes, ma.
Yes, which one? Yes, we do. Yes, we don't. Which one?
Ma, you can start from the diagram.
All right, let me start from the diagram again. All right, the wastewater either comes from the primary treatment or straight from the screening. The wastewater enters into, this is the tank, this is the aeration tank. So the wastewater comes into the aeration tank. You can see air comes in, so that is why we say it is aeration, because there is air in. So this is the tank, this is the aeration tank, and in the aeration tank, you also have the microorganisms. So the wastewater comes into the aeration tank, and the microorganisms in the aeration tank break it down. They biodegrade it. From the aeration tank, it goes to the settling tank or the sedimentation tank. So this water now comes here, and this sludge settles down, and the water at the top, all right, is what is pumped out into the environment. The sludge here, part of the sludge here, the excess sludge is discarded. But part of this sludge returns back to the aeration tank. So it comes back, and it comes back into the aeration tank. So this sludge that comes back into the aeration tank is the activated sludge, is the active sludge. And then we also have inside her the fresh wastewater, because the wastewater is always being pumped. So you have both the fresh wastewater and the activated sludge. And the combination of these gives a better biodegradation than just fresh water without the activated sludge. Let me remind you in some of your experiments, you know, when you take inorganic chemistry, when you try to bring out a precipitate, not inorganic, not organic, you bring out a precipitate, let's say, of silver chloride. But you now want more precipitates. What do you do? Toko, what do you do? Can you remember that you normally scratch the side of your beaker? Are you sleeping?
No, ma. No, ma.
All right. So you know when you want more precipitate, you scratch the side of your beaker. What do you find? By the next morning, you find a lot more precipitate. That's the same thing that happens here. You have the return sludge activates it. So just like you scratching the wall of your vessel activates your precipitate to come out more. The same thing we having a return sludge mixing with the fresh wastewater also helps to break down more of the organics in the wastewater than ordinarily. All right, let's continue. If not, we won't finish. The next one is the oxidation ditch. These are all biological treatments. They are all secondary treatment. You know, I'm using different names, so I can call it biological treatment. I can call it secondary treatment. I can call it, I mean, any of those. All right, biological treatment, secondary treatment. All right, these are all, or any biochemical treatments. All right, no, not biochemical, biological treatment. I can call it either of those two. So always look at it. I can call it secondary treatment. I can call it biological treatment. So another technique is the oxidation ditch. These are, like I said, these are just modifications. They are all just like, they're all biological in nature. So some of them will use pond, some of them will use tank, some of them will use rocks, but they're all biological. Just like the one we have on campus is biological, but they're using wetland, they're using plants, as well as, you know, it goes through a bed, and then you're using wetland. So that is biological as well. So at the activated sludge, your oxidation ditch, like I said, is very similar to your activated sludge, but instead of having the tank, we have an oval-shaped channel, oval-shaped channel, which is about 1 to 2 meters deep, and it is lined with plastic. All right. The wastewater, after screening, goes into it. It is aerated with mechanical rotors. All right. So these are some of them are just modifications. All right. And then your oxidation pond is just a shallow pond, about 0.5 meters to 1.5 meters deep, and you have arrangements for inflow and outflow. In other words, effluent flows into this shallow pond and flows out of it. And in the process of, you know, like the effluents flow in, inside the pond, you have microorganisms. Just like everywhere around, you have microorganisms. In your mouth, there's microorganisms. So once you have any biological substance, you have microorganisms. So inside the pond are microorganisms, and these microorganisms will break down the wastewater, and then you can, by another arrangement, allow the treated wastewater to flow out. So the wastewater, when it comes in, contains a lot of organics, but because inside your pond you have microorganisms, just like everywhere else, all right, the microorganisms break it down. Just like when you see a stagnant water and you start seeing it smelling, all right, let's say the water from your house, all right, and you now flush it into your drains. If there is no way to flow out, it starts to smell. What is happening that it is biodegradation is taking place. It starts to smell, and the smells you are having are those gases that are being produced. So the same thing, you have a shallow pond, all right? The wastewater enters it, and it's broken down, and then there's another arrangement for outflow. The outflow is the treated wastewater. So these are the methods. These are the 5 different modifications of secondary treatment technique. We have aerated lagoons, trickling filters, activated sludge, oxidation ditch, oxidation pond. These are all different techniques, all right? But they all belong to the secondary treatment technique. They are all secondary. Why are they secondary? Who can tell me? Before we go to the anaerobic, why are they secondary treatment technique? You can unmute and talk.
They are biological treatment methods.
Because they are biological in nature, all right? And they break down, and they are to remove the BOD. What is BOD? What is BOD? Unmute and talk.
Demand.
Biochemical oxygen demand.
Biological oxygen demand. That's what BOD is. Biological oxygen demand is BOD. So we have that. So these are all, and all the ones that I've been talking about are really aerobic. So BOD it should not be high in water. So if it is high, it means that that water body is polluted. So we must find a way of reducing it. So your secondary treatment technique helps to reduce the BOD. So all these, like I said, are aerated. In other words, the microorganisms require oxygen before it can break down any of the organics. They are oxygen using microorganisms. But we also have what we call the anaerobic digestion. You know, when I talked the last time, I talked about sludge. When we were looking at the whole scheme, I said your primary treatment, it is screened. Then you have a sedimentation. The sedimentation, you have your sedimentation tank. At the under gravity, the particulates fall and form a sludge. This is the first sludge. Then also after your activated sludge technique, you have sedimentation again, and another sludge is formed. Sludge is formed. So all these two sludges now have to go to anaerobic digestion. Sorry, this one should come after this. Anaerobic digestion. So the primary sludge needs to undergo anaerobic digestion. After it has done that, or it is, then it is, no, sorry, let me take it again. The primary sludge is thickened, then it undergoes anaerobic digestion, and it is only after that that you can now dispose whatever is left into your landfill. So it is this sludge now that I want to talk. How do we treat this sludge? How does anaerobic digestion take place? That's what I'm talking about. So far, what I've talked about is raw wastewater going through screening, sedimentation, then going through effluent for secondary treatment. And under secondary treatment, I gave us 5 different types. All right, one of it is activated sludge, and all of them are aerobic digestion. So now I want to talk about anaerobic digestion, which is for the treatment of our sludge. So let me go back now. So anaerobic digestion just means, like I said, fermentation. So usually it is used for the sludge. The sludge from the primary treatment. We have sludge from the primary treatment undergoes anaerobic digestion. In other words, the microorganisms that are carrying out this digestion do not need oxygen. They are anaerobic bacteria, anaerobic microorganisms. So you have the sludge, and usually the sludge is like watery, it's watery with sediment. It's just like you going to the river and collecting the sediment there. That's what a sludge is like. It has water. So it undergoes fermentation by anaerobic bacteria in a sludge digester. So you must have a digester. So it undergoes fermentation in a sludge digester at a temperature of about 35 degrees. So you have so the digester, you adjust the temperature to 35 degrees. So you have put the sludge inside, you adjust the temperature, and you also adjust the pH to between 7 to 8. And it will be there for 30 days. So it's fermentation. Those of you who have done brewery technique, brewing, also industrial chemistry and chemistry students, you must have done all these, all right? So this is fermentation. So we want to ferment the sludge. So after 30 days, all right, the toxic substances will have been broken down. So anaerobic digestion just means anaerobic breaking down, all right, after 30 days. So whatever you now have, the sludge is then dewatered. You dewater the sludge, all right? In other words, you dewater the sludge by taking it into a filter, into a press, and pressing it. So it's going to be dewatered on dry beds. So it's not liquid, it's like a sludge. It's like a slurry. So on the dry beds, you allow it on a dry bed, you allow the water to be taken off, and then you now press it, and then you chlorinate it. In other words, you add chlorine to this dried substance before you deposit it or dispose of it in a landfill or in an incinerator. This is how the sludge is treated. So the sludge can have all sorts of things, toxic substances. So we need to, first of all, make sure that it is digested anaerobically for about 30 days. It is dewatered, it is pressed, it is chlorinated, and then it is then time to dispose of it in landfill or incinerator. So this is what we have for secondary treatment technique. Any question before I go on to tertiary treatment technique? That is what somebody was asking. How do we remove some of the ions? How do we remove, for instance, seawater? How can we remove the sodium chloride? And I said it is a tertiary treatment technique, which is what we want to go to in a few minutes. So, but before I do that, any question? Are you sleeping?
No, ma, no question, ma.
No question. You understand it very well.
Yes,
So
ma.
if I ask you to just sit down now and write for me, how does effluent from, let's say, the textile industry, all right, how can you treat it? You know how to treat it. If they ask you in an interview, you will shine. Yes?
After reading it, we will shine.
After reading it, you will shine. All right, so very good. I want you to shine though.
Yes, ma.
All right. So the third one is the tertiary treatment technique. So we have gone through pre-treatment, primary treatment, secondary treatment. In most industries in this part of the world, once you have done secondary treatment, you just discharge. Even in some cases, all they do is the primary treatment, they discharge. When we were looking at some of the wastewater treatment facilities in Lagos, we discovered that most of them just have like a pond. Most of the treatment facilities were not working. The ones that were working were just two, which were one is the one in Unilag, and then the one in 1004 were the only two working. The one in Unilag was using secondary treatment methods.
1004.
But the one in on the island was using the primary treatment technique. All they did was add ferrous sulfates, all right, to their waste before discharging it into the water. But in developed countries, what they do is that they have a sewage, all the sewages from the different homes are collected, all right, in a place, and it is treated before discharge. But here we haven't got to that level yet. Most of us, we still have to, after some time, call somebody to come and help us to evacuate the waste. But the one that is even more important is industries. Industries use a lot of chemicals. Some of these chemicals can be carcinogenic. And that's why it's important that industries must treat their waste. Just like we said last week, it could be a pharmaceutical industry. And they are making all sorts of different drugs. It could be Septrin, paracetamol. Which other drugs do you know? Which other drugs can do?
Aspirin.
Panadol.
Atmeta.
Atmeta. Which one is that one? Is that a brand name? Or
That's a malaria drug.
An anti-malaria drug. And chloroquine. They could be doing all sorts of these. But you don't want this waste that comes from that company into the water body without being treated. So the companies must treat those waste and remove the excess of the chemicals they have used. If not, if it's not treated, what do you think will happen? What do you think will happen if it's not treated? Nobody is talking, no. What do you think will happen Yes, doing. I can't hear.
It leads to pollution, man.
Sorry.
Pollution. It leads to pollution.
You see, if I ask you that question in an exam and you tell me it leads to pollution, you have only got 1/10. So because I talked about it last week, so tell me what will happen. You know it, oh. If, for instance, somebody is producing septrin, aspirin, you know, all some other analgesic, and the wastewater from that company is not treated, it's just allowed to go into the drains and goes to hit Lagos Lagoon or goes to hit a river that has fishes. What do you think will happen?
It will lead to bioaccumulation by the fishes, and in turn we eat it and it affects us.
Thank you very much. What I want, very good. What I want you to say is that these chemicals, as they get into the water body, all right, the small fishes or the benthic organisms will take them, and these benthic organisms can be eaten by smaller fishes, which in turn are eaten by bigger fishes, which in turn are eaten by man. Meaning that up the trophic level, we would have what we call biomagnification, bioaccumulation first, and then up the trophic level, we'll have biomagnification. All right. Are we following?
Yes, ma. But we have another class now.
You have another class. So sorry.
Yes, ma.
So let me leave you. So please, let me just say one more word. Tertiary treatment is also called advanced wastewater treatment. Well, we are going to look at evaporation, ion exchange, electrodialysis, all those 4 or 5 different techniques next week, and that will be all for the not for the course. So then we now go on to toxicology of chemicals, and that would be all. So we have.
Okay, ma. But this your recording will be available on the LMS portal.
Yes, I was trying to. I don't know what happened. It just told me that either it's too big or something. It said at the last one, I was trying to put it. I've already recorded. I was trying to put it. So I'm going to get somebody to show me how to do it well. Everything will
Okay,
be
ma.
all right.
Thank you, ma.
All right. So we'll see.
Ma, please, what about the slides?
The slides. That is what we call LMS now. Have you gone to your LMS? The VLAN portal. Have you gone there, Lala?
No, ma. Is it on the LMS?
Yes, ma. But I don't think it's updated, ma.
It's because, like I said, each time I want to update it, all the slides I wanted to give it to you. Each time I wanted to update it, it's always so. I'm going to get somebody. I don't know what the problem is. It's not allowing me. I'm going to get one of the people who know about it so that I can upload it properly for you.
Okay,
all
ma.
right?
Thank you, ma.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma.
All right. So so next week we will try to do as much as possible, but we still have quite a bit. So we might have to ask for extra time. So let me know so that we can do a 2-hour bit if it's possible. We can do a 2-hour bit, and then we will now be able to finish, because I want us to finish well before the exams. All right.
All right.
All right. All right. Hello. Yes. Hello.